everyone, my name's Lauren Cobb and I'm a Senior Student Recruitment Officer for Leeds Trinity University. Really hope you enjoy this presentation and get a lot out of it. I'm going to be taking you through our top tips for how to write an excellent personal statement. Along the way, I'll also be signposting you, and there'll be links in this presentation to some really useful websites and sources as well that you can also use when you're drafting your personal statement. So the next slides will be me narrating the presentation. I will be stopping for some activities that I'll ask you to do. So when we get to those activities, I'll ask you to pause the slideshow and then resume it when you've completed. Many thanks, and I hope you enjoy it. So what are the objectives of this presentation? My hope is that by the end of the presentation, you've got a better understanding of the formula of a personal statement and really how to create a really excellent personal statement. I will be giving you advice on how to create your personal statement, and I'll also be signposting you to useful resources throughout the presentation, which you can use as a reference to then go on and start your own. Before you start the presentation, just a few notes on how to navigate your way through it. When you see a hyperlink on the presentation slide, which is in yellow text and is underlined, you can use that after the presentation to go back to any of the websites that I have referred to when I am narrating the presentation. When there is a task and I ask you to pause the presentation, if you right-click and press on pause from the drop-down menu, the presentation will be paused so you can draft notes or you can have a think about what I've asked you to do, and then if you right click and press resume, the presentation will start again automatically. So what is a personal statement then? So in the wider context of a UCAS application, I always think of a UCAS application as a bit like a job application. So you've got what I always call kind of like the bread and butter details that you need to put into your UCAS application, such as your personal details. Just really to flag up here that that's including any special needs or disabilities. So if you do identify with having any special educational needs or any disabilities, please do flag that up on your UCAS application, so then the university knows to put support in and to contact you about the support we can offer from an early stage. The university or course choices. So when you're applying through UCAS, you can apply, you have 5 different choices. Now that can be either the same course at 5 different universities, or you might choose to apply to maybe 3 universities, 2 of which you've applied for 2 different courses at. But just a note on that, your personal statement has to cover the course that you want to do. So if you are applying for 2 courses at a university, they do need to be really similar for your personal statement to be able to apply to both. So for example, if you applied for primary education and business studies, your personal statement is not going to adequately cover both of those courses. However, if you're applying for primary education and education studies, your personal statement would adequately cover both of those courses. So if you're applying to fewer universities but 2 courses at those universities, make sure that the courses are similar courses. You also have to put on your education, so your GCSE results and your predicted grades. There's a section for employment history, including any work experience or volunteering. Fill that in as well, so it gives us a really holistic picture of you, because at the admissions departments at our universities, all they see in front of them is this piece of paper to get a picture of yourself as a candidate. Unfortunately, at application stage, we don't meet you face to face, we don't have any background on you, so we don't get any more of a picture. And then finally, part of this UCAS application is your personal statement. So your personal statement, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is where you sell yourself, where you say why you want to do that course, or why the university should accept you for that course. There is a limit for this, so it has to be 47 lines or 4,000 characters. The reason for this is because admissions tutors, when they're reading the personal statements, there needs to be a limit or else the job would be unmanageable. so we have to rein you in somehow. There will also be a reference which your school or college will write and upload. So ucas.com, the website that you will apply through, defines a personal statement as it supports your application to study at a university or college. It's a chance for you to articulate why you'd like to study that particular course or subject, and the skills and experience you possess that show your passion for your chosen field. And on the next slides, I'm going to take you through our top tips to really cover that last piece. So how you're going to include your skills, your experience, your passion for your subject, and the best ways to be doing that. So our top tips for writing your personal statement are listed below, and this presentation is based on an article from the Complete University Guide website, which I've put a hyperlink at the bottom of this presentation, and it was accessed in March 2020. So the first top tip then for writing an excellent personal statement is making a plan before you start. Think about all the essays you've written for your A-levels, for your GCSEs. You'd never go into them cold. You'd always spend some time planning before you commence. So I want you to pause this presentation and have a best guess. What's the average amount of times to redraft you think that someone redrafts a personal statement? Hope you've thought of a number. There's no right or wrong answer to this, but 7 to 10 times is not unheard of. So you will start with the basis. You will rewrite when you get feedback from your personal tutor at school or college, until you really refine this into something you're happy with and something that sells you really well. Don't jump straight in. Brainstorm ideas beforehand and plan beforehand. If you need a little bit of help with that, if you go onto ucas.com after the presentation, you can follow this link, and they've got some really useful planning tools which will help you mind map. There's a planning timeline on there, and there's a structured planning sheet as well that you can print off and fill out. The second tip that we're going to talk about then is thinking about the language and tone you use during your personal statement. Quite common, I've seen personal statements that are written in a kind of essay style, because obviously that's how people are used to writing in their level 3 studies. However, there is a certain technique, a certain tone that we'd recommend that you take when writing your personal statement. So the best way to illustrate this, rather than me talking about it, I'm going to show you 2 examples, and you can kind of judge for yourself what you think really works and maybe what to avoid. So on the next slide, there are 2 personal statements, just the introductions from personal statements for the BA Honours Primary Education later years with Qualified Teacher Status degree. Your task. So when I put the next slide up, pause and then resume the slideshow again. I want you to read both introductions and note down which introduction or which parts of each introduction you prefer, you think are really good, and why. So introduction A, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Albert Einstein. This quote sums up my passion to be a primary school teacher and to inspire every student to strive and achieve, no matter what their background is. I love children, it is my passion to work with them, and I believe Leeds Trinity University's primary education course will help me to do that. Introduction B. I have always been fascinated about how children develop and learn in their younger formative years, as I believe a child's early educational experience can influence the rest of their lives. I believe a BA Honours in primary education will help me learn how different students learn and how to tailor the teaching of subjects to engage all individuals, helping me with my ambition of becoming a primary school teacher with a particular focus on teaching students between 5 and 11 years old. So there are your 2 introductions. Pause this slideshow and then resume it. You might want to print out this slide and make some annotations or some notes on a separate piece of paper as well. Okay, so hopefully you've had a look at both introductions, you've had chance to make notes on them, annotate them, or just gather your thoughts about both introductions, what you thought was effective and maybe ineffective, and which introduction you thought was the more effective. So in my opinion, introduction B is a more effective introduction. And what I've done is I've gone through introduction A, I've made some bullet points and I've highlighted parts which introduction A did less well as a point of comparison to introduction B. So the first thing that I would advise to avoid in your personal statement is this use of quotes. The reason for this primarily is because although you might think this is a really unique original quote to use and it sounds really good, which it does, an admissions tutor looking at personal statements for your specific course might have come across this a couple of hundred times in their working life, or maybe just in that cycle, and will certainly be quite fatigued of that and of seeing that quote by the time they come to your personal statement. So it doesn't make your personal statement stand out. Actually, the more effective thing to do in your introduction is really to quickly hone in on why you're interested in that course, what's inspired you to apply for it at university, and what you're looking forward to studying further. So this use of a quote that's maybe regurgitated from the internet, I would advise to completely avoid. It's a cliche. And other cliches, so a really common one for primary school teaching to avoid, things like I love children, talking about your passion. Again, just try and leave those cliches out. Something that might be more effective here, rather than talking about your passion, for example, might have been to talk about your interest, your ambition, your motivation. With this cliche of I love children, certainly for primary education students, leave it out. We'll talk about introduction B and how they do this more effectively when we come to look at that introduction in a bit more detail. And again, avoiding arrogance. So we're really focusing for this top tip on the tone and language you use. But when we were looking at slide 4, I mentioned that we don't have any background on you as a student, and actually all an admissions tutor has in front of them is your application, that piece of paper, and this personal statement. So we really want to get a really holistic view of yourself as a student, and you wouldn't want to come across as arrogant. I'm really nitpicking here. This isn't the most arrogant thing that I'm sure many admissions tutors have seen put in a personal statement. But just this bit about inspiring every student to strive and achieve could come across as quite arrogant, because this student hasn't even started the primary school teaching training yet. It might be a bit arrogant to think that you could inspire every student in your teaching career. Maybe just shows a lack of subject knowledge, a lack of career knowledge there as well. So again, something to avoid. And a really easy one, and a real no-no, is using a specific university's name. So I mentioned in slide 4 that you have 5 choices of institution. So therefore, if you're mentioning a specific institution in your application, it's great for that institution, but you would be alienating the other 4 institutions that you've applied to, because you've shown clear favouritism, a clear allegiance with one institution, and your personal statement should be something that can be applied to all the institutions that you're applying to. So I'll go through in introduction B how they've done this a bit more effectively. Avoid putting in a specific institution's name, definitely. So let's talk about introduction B and how they've approached their introduction to their personal statement. Again, I've highlighted and added bullet points about the things that I thought this introduction just did better. So the first one then, using plain language, but also highlighting knowledge and research of the subject. So talking about, rather than a passion or a quote, always being fascinated about how children develop and learn in their younger formative years. Formative years in particular here is language that's maybe taken out of their A-level or BTEC study and is applicable to their university study. So some subject-specific vocabulary in there. It just sets this off in a better foot, and actually, rather than regurgitating a quote or coming across as arrogant, using that plain language but subtly highlighting subject-specific knowledge and research of the subject is really effective here. I talked in the last slide about not mentioning a specific university. So here, this candidate has talked about a BA Honours in primary education rather than a specific course at a specific institution. So ensuring that this could apply to all 5 institutions they're applying to rather than just focusing and showing favouritism to one. We've got a real focus on the course here and the rationale for applying straight away. Going back to what I was saying about not using a quote, and the more effective thing to do is show why you're interested in that course, why you're applying. That's what your introduction should do and should hone in on. So here, talking about a BA Honours in primary education, helping this candidate to learn how different students learn and how to tailor the teaching of subjects to engage all individuals. Remember, I talked about arrogance on the last slide and talked about them saying that they've got a passion for this subject and they're going to inspire every single student that they ever teach. Here, we're getting a feeling that this candidate is talking about the process of learning how to be a primary school teacher, not coming across as arrogant, but coming across as a bit more down to earth and ready to learn. So they're talking about how to tailor the teaching of subjects, what they're going to learn on this course, as opposed to what they would love to do, what they believe they're going to be able to do. And it's just a really clear focus, and it's structured really well as its introduction on where they're going after their studies. So a primary school teacher with a particular focus on teaching students between 5 to 11 years old. Now, I completely understand here with something like primary education that is a lot easier to do than maybe if you're applying for an English degree. However, you can just allude to a focus upon career path, upon further study that you might want to do, or even maybe things during your degree that you want to learn more about if you don't have a specific career in mind. So top tip number 3 then is how to write about your academic achievements. And I think what's really key here, and what I want you to take away from this, is that in a personal statement, we're not looking for a list of qualifications and predicted grades that you have. We talked earlier in the presentation about the UCAS form and the wider context, and you'll have remembered that there's a space to do that earlier on in the UCAS form. So what an admissions tutor is looking for when you're talking about your academic achievements is that you're breaking this down into maybe topics that you've studied that have sparked your interest, how the subjects you're studying at the moment have inspired you to study either that subject further or pick a new subject that uses the same skills or has a bit of crossover at degree level. So really looking for those links to the subject you're applying to. Talk about then how your subjects have equipped you with skills and how these link to studying the subject you've applied for at a university level, rather than that listing of subjects. We already know that. And include any research you've done into your subject and outside reading. So I've really talked a lot in this presentation about your personal statement showing that you are well-rounded. So when we look at top tip number 4, which is including extracurricular activities, these need to really be linked to the skills that you've developed from these and how those skills can contribute not only to your subject but to your success at university and studying at university level. So we talked first of all, and our first top tip was about planning and not jumping straight into your personal statement. So when you're in that planning stage, think of everything that you've done in and out of school that helped to give you soft skills as well as academic skills, okay? So the kind of skills that you get from part-time work, clubs, societies, National Citizenship Service or your Duke of Edinburgh Award, things like timekeeping, communication, teamwork, because all of these soft skills are going to be really useful for you to be successful when adapting to higher education study, as well as the academic background and the academic platform that your subjects have given you. And really key here is when you're looking at your extracurricular activities is linking these to the skills you've gained from them and how this links to university study. and if relevant, and even better, the subject you are studying. So let me give you an example. You might have a part-time job at McDonald's. You might want to include that in this section of your personal statement. So I have a part-time job at McDonald's. It's all very nice, but it doesn't illustrate anything about you and the skills that you've gained and convince that admissions tutor as to why you'd be a really good fit for their university and their course. So to make this better then, we would write, I have a part-time job at McDonald's, which has given me excellent experience of working with others to achieve a shared outcome. This has given me a great foundation for successful group learning, such as group presentations, which I know are an important part of university level study. So having a part-time job at McDonald's might not link to the subject that you're studying, however, it does link to giving you skills that are useful for higher education study, and that's really what I wanted to get out there. If you're applying for a sport course, for example, and you've worked on summer camps, maybe at your school, or you've done a bit of sports coaching, you maybe already compete competitively as an athlete, of course, you'd make those links directly relevant to the subject you were studying, as well as the skills that you've gained. But for those of you who don't have that subject link, think about everything else you've done, the soft skills, and how we can link those together. And that's what we want to see in this section of your personal statement. Okay, so our fifth top tip then is making your career ambitions clear and demonstrating your enthusiasm for the course. If you don't have clear career ambitions at this point, make sure you've demonstrated that enthusiasm for the course and alluded to your future pathway. So I'm going to give you some real life examples now, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the slideshow, resume it when you've had a thought about what is wrong with the real life examples. So I enjoy the theatre and used to go a couple of times a year, from someone applying for drama. I'm a keen reader and I'm committed to the study of human behaviour through TV soaps. My favourite hobby is beekeeping and I want to be an engineer. My interest in medicine stems from my enjoyment of Casualty and other related TV series. I've always had a passion to study medicine, failing that, pharmacy. All of these can be found on the Complete University Guide website. So if you could pause this slideshow now, have a think about these all, or maybe 2 or 3 of them, and then resume it when you've had a bit of a think. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about a few of these. So let's take the first one. I enjoy the theatre and used to go a couple of times a year from a drama student. So this emphasis on the past tense of something that you used to do just makes us feel like drama was maybe a past interest. If you don't go to the theatre anymore, the theatre is quite expensive to go to, instead talk about maybe the amateur dramatics that you're involved in, the drama that you do in school, or maybe in theatre groups outside of school. So something that is current rather than past. Again here, let's look at 2 and 3. So being a reader and talking about TV soaps. Your favourite hobby is beekeeping, you want to be an engineer. We've touched upon this on the last slide. Of course, it's important to talk about your extracurricular activities, but make sure that there is the link between the extracurricular activities and either the course that you want to study or the skills that you've gained from that and higher education study. I've always had a passion to study medicine, failing that, pharmacy. Here, when we've alluded to this in the previous slides as well, you want to show that you're dedicated and motivated towards studying one particular course in your personal statement. You don't want to show that there's any courses that is a fallback, so don't ever make anything seem like a backup option. So here, pharmacy seems like very much a backup option, which again, to an admissions tutor, wouldn't show your motivation to study that course. And actually, as it says here, pharmacy is just as popular and high status as medicine. So particularly for these really competitive high tariff courses, you've really got to show a clear motivation for those and clear ambition. And last but not least then, our final top tip is don't leave it until the last minute. So find out your school and college internal deadline. They will have an earlier internal deadline than the UCAS deadline because they want to have a look over these personal statements, and your tutor, your teachers will need to write your references, which can be really time consuming as well. So the university deadline is usually the 15th of January, but you want to really be aiming to get this in before then, as soon as the applications come through to our admissions departments after the beginning of September, we will start getting back to applicants, we will start making offers, and the really popular courses can get full, so the sooner you get this in, the quicker you'll start to get your offers. Having said that, do also take time to do this properly, draft and redraft. Think about your school and college's internal deadline, because they're usually set at about the right time to get this in and to ensure that you've done a really good job of it. When your application is in, as I've just said, universities will start making those offers. And I just want to finish off by asking you to follow the hyperlink on the bottom of this screen, which takes you to the UCAS website, and a really nice video just to sum up everything that we've talked about personal statements from the perspective of an admissions tutor, and give you that final bit of advice. And I think the final thing to say from me then is good luck. I hope your personal statement writing goes well. And if you do have any more questions for us, you can email us at sclhello@leedstrinity.ac.uk. So thanks again for listening. Before you go, on the next slides are a few things that I'd like you to know about Leeds Trinity University. And if you follow the link on this last slide, you will be able to get through to our website as well. At Leeds Trinity University, we really value employability, and we want to really produce really employable graduates. Therefore, we embed a professional work placement into every undergraduate degree. You will do this in your first and your second year of your degree, and we believe this really contributes to your employability upon graduation from us. We also offer study abroad as part of our degree offer. So we offer short-term placements, perhaps 2 weeks or 1 semester, to longer term placements, which could actually include a year studying abroad. And we really see this as a really valuable offer as part of our undergraduate degrees. If you couldn't study abroad as part of your degree, for example, if your degree is professionally accredited, like primary education, for example, we do offer volunteering opportunities abroad as well, with partner voluntary agencies, which the university will support you to fundraise for and to acquire as well. 95% of our graduates are in work or further study after 6 months of graduating with us, and we really put that down to the experience that you get and the employability that you get from those professional workplaces. And finally then, we are top 25 in the UK for teaching and course satisfaction. So that's everything for me. Hope to see an application from yourselves for Leeds Trinity University soon.